Welcome back to BYoungMinistry.com to another blog and to another podcast. Welcome to those who access the podcast through Apple Podcasts, Rumble, Spotify, and YouTube. Today we continue in our study of the book of Genesis. We're in chapter 49, verses 13 through 18, which reads, Zebulun shall dwell by the haven of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall adjoin Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey, lying down between two burdens. He saw that rest was good, and that the land was pleasant. He bowed his shoulder to bear a burden, and became a band of slaves. Dan shall judge his people, as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that its rider shall fall backward. I have waited for your salvation, O Lord. That's Genesis chapter 49, verses 13 through 18. Today we continue our study of Genesis 49, where Jacob, at the end of his earthly life, is delivering blessings upon his 12 sons. To this point, we've considered 4 of the 12 sons. Today, we will consider the next 3. Each word in this passage is prophetic of the work of the Lord Jesus Christ to purchase fallen man back to God. In this, we see that the Lord Jesus Christ is the fulfillment of all things good and truthful. It was he who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. In verse 13 of today's passage, we read, Zebulun shall dwell by the haven of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall adjoin Sidon. Jacob, after blessing Judah, now turns his attention to his 10th born son, Zebulun. Judah was the 4th son of Israel, so this seems out of place. But Zebulun was born to Leah, not to one of the maidservants. And so the blessing is upon her sons first. However, Zebulun has another brother, Issachar, who was born to Leah before he was. And yet, Jacob first blessed Zebulun before he blessed Issachar. Zebulun means glorious dwelling place. The word sea was written in the plural here. Literally, it means Zebulun at the shores of the seas shall dwell, implying that this tribe would fill the land between the Mediterranean Sea and the Sea of Galilee. Zebulun's inheritance included a shore where ships unloaded, revealing the people of Zebulun would be a people predominantly engaged in commerce next to the town of Sidon. Sidon was the firstborn of Canaan, and his territory was at the northern end of the land of Canaan. Sidon means catching fish, confirming that Zebulun would have a portion of coastal territory. As each son of Jacob so far has pointed us to the Lord Jesus, this one does too. Zebulun describes that place where Christ brings all who trust in him into the presence of God through his work on the cross. In verses 14 and 15 of today's passage, we read, Issachar is a strong donkey, lying down between two burdens. He saw that rest was good, and that the land was pleasant. He bowed his shoulder to bear a burden, and became a band of slaves. Issachar was Jacob's 9th son, the 5th born to Leah. Issachar means he is wages. He's called a strong donkey. This type of donkey is a service animal, used like an ox for plowing and other such heavy work. In addition, Issachar will be placed between two borders, the region of Syrophoenicia on one side and Samaria on the other. The word translated here as burdens is used only twice in the Bible. The other time it is translated as sheepfolds, indicating Issachar would be like a servant animal who finds rest in a comfortable spot. The word rest is the same word used to describe the still waters in Psalm 23. Due to his peaceful surroundings and his well-placed position between two areas where there is safety and rest, he will be willing to bear a heavy burden upon his shoulder in order to obtain what he desires. As Issachar means he is wages, the idea is that in the future he will be a man of hire. In other words, his labors will be his pay. He will be a bondservant. No one but the Lord Jesus fits this bill. In verses 16 through 18 of today's passage, we read, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heels, so that its rider shall fall backward. I have waited for your salvation, O Lord. In the final blessing today, that of Dan, the fifth-born son of Jacob, and the first of four born to his two concubines. Dan was the firstborn to Bilhah, the maidservant of Rachel. Dan means to plead the cause of. In Dan, we see a most striking and clear picture of the work of the Lord Jesus. In John chapter 6 and verse 38, the Lord Jesus said, "For I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me." Then in John 9:39, he said, "For judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may be made blind." Then in John 10:10, he said, "I have come that they might have life, and that they may have it more abundantly." In 1 John chapter 2, verse 1, we read, "And if anyone sins, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous." Jacob likened Dan to a serpent, which is the same word used for the serpent in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 1. Since Dan is likened to this serpent, which is the same word used in John 3, verses 14 and 15, which reads, "And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." In addition, Jacob described Dan as a viper, which comes from a Hebrew word which means to bruise. In Genesis 3:15 we read, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." At the end of verse 18, we have the first usage of the name Yeshua in the Old Testament. Of course, Yeshua is Jesus. In Acts chapter 4, verse 12, we read, "Nor is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved." The name of whom Peter spoke that day was none other than the Lord Jesus Christ. He is the suffering Messiah, predicted by the psalmist 1,000 years before his coming. In Psalm 22, we read, "For dogs have surrounded me. The congregation of the wicked has enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet, that I can count all my bones." They look and stare at me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. The Lord Jesus could not have orchestrated these events if he were a mere man. This is one of many passages in the Old Testament which all point us to the one who is the God who became a man in order to save us by paying our penalty on the cross. My friends, I trust this blog and this podcast are helping you in your walk with the Lord. If I can be of further assistance to you, shoot me an email at BYoungMinistry@gmail.com. Hey, have a great